Good afternoon and welcome to Bariatric Friday. My name is Kemal Erkan. I'm the chairman of American Surgery Center. Today, we are going to do our second session for the nutritionist visit. As we promised, it was right before the summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So Beth Wright is one of our nutritionists, dietitians. She's joining me. So for those who may not remember, this first video, I'm going to just quickly check that.
And I can also go over that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to give the time frame of the first video. I think it was about 6 months ago.
It was June or July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was when I'm the mock patient. But most of the stuff that I'm actually answering, probably 70% of them are correct things that I do from day to day. So, but if you would like to start with the overview of our first one, then let's start the session from there.
Sounds good. All right. So just to take a global picture, when a patient comes to us and wants to pursue bariatric surgery, they typically meet with the dietitian at least 3 to 4 times before they have surgery, and then usually once after surgery as well. And the goal for these sessions is to really have the dietitian help the patient set themselves up for the healthiest weight loss that they can have after surgery. And then secondly, we also want to help them set up healthy processes that they will go through in their life in order to keep from putting a lot of weight back on over the years after surgery. So before we jump into our mock second session, which is the topic of today's webinar, I wanted to give you a recap of what we covered in our first initial session for anybody that hasn't seen that video. So the introductory session with a dietitian for this bariatric process is really focused on relationship building, because we need to be able to have both the patient and the dietitian establish a mutual connection of trust and respect, so that we can work together really effectively over the coming months. So the other thing that I do when I have a patient for the first time is I do take them through just an overview of what to expect, because sometimes if you meet with somebody that a healthcare person you've never met with before, it's a little nerve-wracking. Like, what do they want me to do? So I tell them a little bit about what dietitians do, what our role is in this process, and then I let them know kind of what we're going to cover in all of our sessions. So, I tell them this is our introductory session. Our second session will be where we're really getting more into the education and goal setting. And then our final session is when we can go over how to recover after surgery. The meat of that first session is going over patterns that the patient currently engages in, things like their food pattern. So the dietitian asks a lot of questions about, what do you eat? What do you drink? When do you like to have your meals? Do you skip meals very often? So a dietitian needs all those details in order to help a patient decide where they need to put some effort into improving their nutritional health. But we also look at things outside of just what people are eating and drinking. Like, we look at people's sleep patterns, because we know that a lot of research has shown that our hormonal balance is affected by our amount of sleep. And obviously the lack of sleep tends to kind of throw things out of whack, and getting enough sleep helps the body to perform at its peak. So dietitians tend to check in on that as well and try to encourage them to reach out to other healthcare practitioners if they're having a hard time with sleep. We check on other patterns like exercise, of course, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that today as well. But I need to know, are people already exercising a lot, or are they doing absolutely nothing? So I need to know kind of where to meet them in our counseling sessions. And then other patterns that we look at, like how they spend the bulk of their time is, what do they do for work? Because that can help me figure out, is a person sitting at a desk all day? In which case we need to kind of really work on making sure that they find ways to stay active, even though they have a pretty sedentary job. But, if they have a job where they're if they're a preschool teacher, they're not sitting down very long. So, we approach things a little differently when they have a very active job. And then lastly, what's their living situation like? We look at that as well. Family and housing and access to food and access to cooking equipment, things like that. So that's what we talked about a lot in our first session. There's two other things that I tend to cover in the first initial session with a patient. I do talk about a few things that eventually that patient is going to need to purchase to have on hand right after surgery. One of them being bariatric vitamins and minerals, because as most people learn early on, we always ask patients after they have bariatric surgery to commit to taking vitamins and minerals on a daily basis. And that's a forever thing. It's not just for a couple months. And then they also will need to try different protein drinks to see what they like and what they don't like, so that they'll have to have some of those purchased for right after surgery as for their recovery process. The last thing that I try to talk about, if there's enough time left in the initial session, is about online tracking apps, using your phone to kind of help you keep an idea of what you eat and drink throughout the day. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. We're going to get a little more into detail about that. So that just summarizes in general what I try to cover in an initial session. So with that, do you want me to jump right into our play acting?
I want to, yes, we can actually start doing that. So, and I will tell you since the last visit.
Yeah. Good.
Now, because we do also our Bariatric Friday a couple times a month these days. So what happens is, of course, everything that we told, I see whether or not we are able to follow through some of these. Now, there were some learning points for me from our first visit, and I make some adjustments.
Okay.
One really important thing for me, and I think any patients who's following this. Now, I'm not I didn't go through bariatric surgery, so I'm the program, I'm the chairman of the surgery center, so that's part of, this is part of my job. But I always emphasize this where those who are not fighting morbid obesity, we also deal with the same thing, same issues to prevent morbid obesity. So what we have to do is almost same. And I mentioned this in our earlier sessions in diabetes. So if once you have diabetes, then you have to do certain things to control diabetes. But if you don't have diabetes, then you have to do certain things to prevent diabetes. So both of those things that we do, either controlling or preventing, are the same things.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
now,
absolutely.
it helps me from the point of whether or not patients shouldn't feel like they're a victim of this disease. Because even if you don't have morbid obesity, then you still have to do everything that we are talking about today.
Yeah,
And
oftentimes I will let patients know I have to work hard at all of these things as well. So I'm no different.
And one of the big change that I made is to take the diet journey more seriously. And I'm on and off with, I'm using an app that I created, but you can actually use any of the apps from one of the applications. But I want to share that with you so that you can kind of see. As you know, I do Monday through Friday. Usually I'm on intermittent diet, intermittent fasting. And that's because it's easier for me. It's one of the choices, and I do like doing it. Dr. Irgau introduced me to that several years ago, and most part of the year, because of Monday through Friday on a regular basis, I am actually pretty much on that discipline. But then if I may just share my screen. So I'm just going to show you probably, there are something that I have to do in order to actually, even if with the intermittent fasting, I have to make changes. So I'm going to share this with you guys. You can see my screen now?
Yes, I can see it.
Now, I've been recording what I'm doing on a daily basis, but as you can see, there's a gap here from November 9th through December 30th. That's actually because Monday through Friday I was on autopilot. So I'm doing 9 p.m. to 1 p.m. fasting. So that's about 15 and a half hours, depending on the day, but it's pretty much set. But now, starting from just December 30th, one thing that I realized is that whether or not if I cheat on the day, and then I added this one to see whether or not if I have anything. So on the Saturday, December 30th, I had milkshake. And then December 31st, because there was a New Year party, I had ice cream. But then I added this one. This is now I'm clear for 3 days. Now, today, probably I will have something that's not good for me, but I will still be honest and put it here. So this was my process of, okay, now whether or not I am doing something on a regular basis, and if I'm really just saying it, or whether or not if I'm just saying it, or if I'm doing it. Now, the other really important thing that I have to do is I got one of these Apple Watches, but then prior to that, you don't need a watch. You can actually have, which I share this with, I do this very regularly. Like yesterday was a very cold day, right? So
Yeah.
I put 7,200 steps yesterday, and 5,000 of those happened after 9 p.m. And even though it was cold, I had to push myself to go out because I was in the office and I didn't do much. I didn't have the morning walk. This week I had a lot of meetings from 8 to 11 in the morning, so that I'm not able to walk. But then my Saturday, when I had the milkshake day, I had like 12,500 steps. I had my tennis day. So between this and the application that I'm using to keep a log of my daily highlights in a way, it helped me a lot. And I lost, since the last time you and we talked, I probably lost 10 to 14 pounds. So now, one other thing that I had to do based on your suggestion is I do have Gatorade at home, and I don't drink a lot of them, but it wasn't the zero. It was just a regular sugar one. So then I changed that to zero. And I don't have any alcohol, most likely Monday through Thursday, on a regular basis. I try to stay away. And then when I have it, it's not more than 2. And between those, I'm thinking if I had anything else. So I think, like maybe with your questions, I may remember some, but I made some overall changes. And now, not only just, I feel, but other people are actually noticing. Actually, just last week, a couple of our people, they mentioned something about if I lost weight, and which I did. And I'm going to give you all the credits.
No, you will not, because you did that work.
So I think taking it seriously is the key, whether or not we take this seriously.
And that's an interesting one, because motivation is definitely a major player in making long-term sustained changes. But just like with anything in life, we can't fire on all cylinders all day, every single day. So some of the things that we talk about with the dietitian is how do we kind of reroute ourselves when we fall short of what we say our goals are. So, and I appreciate you letting me know kind of what the steps you've been taking to improve your health have been over these last 6 months, because that's exactly how I tend to start my second session with patients. Is I just check in with them and I ask them, hey, do you have any updates on things that you feel like are going really well, that you've been paying attention to? And then the other thing I ask is, and are there any issues that you're struggling with, or that you want me to go into more detail about or help you with? And then of course I'm always letting them know, hey, any questions, shout them out. I'm happy to, answer questions at any time. So I do want to, if it's all right with you, jump into some of the topics that we really do focus on regarding behavior change. Okay with you?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Good. So the first topic I want to bring up today is one I do strongly feel is fundamental in having a very healthy nutritional lifestyle. And that's the topic of meal planning. And we could even say meal and snack planning. And there's kind of two things. I also talk about meal prepping. They're two separate things that can be very important tools for being healthy most of the time. So meal planning, of course, it can mean different things to different people, but in general, what it means is not waiting to the very last minute to grab something to eat. It means being a step ahead of the game and kind of thinking through things so you can make more purposeful choices according to what your goals are. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that meal planning means that you have to have a spreadsheet of everything you're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the entire week. But what it tends to mean is, well, let me use myself as an example, because as you brought up a good point earlier, Kemal, that we have to practice these same types of patterns that our patients need to engage in as well. So my version of meal planning is I sit down usually on a weekend day when I have a little bit more time, and I write out a general shopping list for what are my dinners going to be this week, right? So I can not waste a lot of food and money. And I know, let's just say this week I'm going to bake a chicken, and that's going to be good for 2 meals. And then I'm going to do a homemade stew one day, and I'm going to make sure that I cook enough on those days that I have leftovers for a few days. So I have a general idea of what I'm going to have for my dinners. Breakfast and lunches, well, those we tend to do kind of on a pattern basis, right? So I just buy a couple healthy things that I know I usually eat for breakfast. I get eggs, I get whole grain bread if I'm going to have any of that. I get peanut butter, I get things like that. And then lunches. So the night before I go to bed, after dinner, I decide what's my lunch going to be tomorrow. Because if I didn't do that, what's going to happen? I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm rushed for work like everybody else is. And if I didn't think through what I'm going to have the night before, I just open my fridge and grab what's there, shove it in my box, and go to work. And most likely, it's not going to be as healthy as if the night before I thought, okay, what's my protein going to be? What's my vegetable going to be? What's my fruit going to be? And sometimes I even put them on a shelf in the refrigerator all together so that when I'm throwing things together, I remember, oh, that's right, I'm going to have that, and I'm going to have that. Or I set things out on the kitchen counter. So that's how I meal plan. It can be done different ways. It doesn't have to be done my way. But again, by doing that, I stay away from 3 scenarios that tend to be if we engage in on a regular basis, it tends to slow down our metabolisms and can affect our weight loss in a negative way. So one of the situations I'm avoiding is, all right, I'm at work, I didn't have time to pack lunch, so I'm going to order out, or I'm going to go grab something, right? Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, all of us should be able to get a meal out, of course. Absolutely. But on a regular basis, restaurants are a for-profit business. They're there to sell a lot of food. And how they do that is they make it taste really good. And to do that, they usually use more sugar, salt, or fat in their foods than we would at home if we were trying to be healthier. So I want to avoid doing takeout or DoorDash or grabbing stuff out on a regular basis. The other thing might be, hey, I didn't bring lunch today, but I don't want to eat an unhealthy fast food meal, so I'll just skip eating. Well, that too is not a very healthy way to lose weight. It's a little different than intermittent fasting. That's not what we're talking about right now. But just like meal skipping haphazardly all the time, that isn't a way that the body needs fuel to work efficiently. The other scenario is what I referred to earlier as those grab and go meals that might not be as balanced. So planning and thinking ahead really does help you be more involved and prepared. And the other thing I'd say is snacks. Like, I don't encourage everybody to eat snacks every single day, but if you are truly hungry between meals, it is a nice idea to eat a little something healthy so that you don't go into your next meal so hungry that you overeat. So I've planned ahead to have healthy snacks in my office. If you came in here, Kemal, you would find about 5 kinds of nuts in my drawer, some freeze-dried fruit. And so if I am hungry, I'm not going to wander down to see what's in the break room because that might be Christmas cookies and that might
We have
be, what's that?
health snacks in Susan's office.
Okay, there you go. Yeah,
No,
so
a
yeah,
lot of
so
healthy-
thank you. Come into my office and get some healthy snacks. So meal planning is pretty essential. And so I work with patients a lot on setting goals to start to do that if they don't already do that, to reduce eating out, meal skipping, etc. Another thing that I cover in the middle session is what are some of the very important nutrients that bariatric patients have to focus in on getting. And right after surgery, the main emphasis is really because you have such a small stomach afterwards, you can't eat very much at a time. So the emphasis is on getting in enough protein, because if you don't eat enough protein, the body will start to kind of break down some of the muscle to get the protein, because the body's cellular processes has to have protein to function. We have to have protein to live. So if you don't get it through your food or drink, you'll start to lose a lot of muscle weight. And that's not very ideal. You want to try to, so eating enough or drinking enough protein after bariatric surgery helps to minimize muscle loss. So we talk a lot about that, and that's where tracking comes in handy. I'll talk about tracking in a minute to know if you are getting enough in your food. The other big emphasis, and you were talking about your drinking habits earlier, is staying well hydrated. So I do talk with patients about really kind of being aware. Cheers. You have some lovely infused water. What is that? Lemon and mint leaves or something?
Lemon, mint, cucumber, and ginger.
Okay, thank you for showing that. I often talk with patients about water doesn't have to be just plain all the time. Doing something like that can make it really enticing for your taste buds to want to drink more. So yes, staying well hydrated after surgery is something that we go through, and I kind of walk them through, you know, how much they should be trying to get in a day. And then we also talk about how that changes a little bit after surgery, because again, with that really small stomach after surgery, you have to start to time when you eat versus when you drink. Those two things need to happen at separate times, because your stomach is going to be about that big after surgery. And if you are drinking all the time and then you try to eat a meal, well, it's already, you know, halfway full with liquid. If you put food in there as well, you're going to fill up either too fast and not get enough of your food in, or you'll put so much in there that you bring it back up, which is not a pleasant experience. So we do talk about hydration, and make sure that patients are starting to really pay attention to that before surgery, so that it's one of their habits that they know to pay attention to it after surgery as well. There's a few other things that I talk about in the second session regarding hydration. So a lot of things do change about what people maybe used to drink before surgery and what we recommend people drink after surgery. So we do have patients start to wean from caffeine if they're major caffeine drinkers. We want them to be caffeine free before that, when they enter into their kind of pre-surgery diet, and then stay caffeine free for a couple months at least after surgery. The same thing, we ask for avoidance of alcohol as well, and also of carbonation, bubbles in things, because all of those things can do have some negative effect in that newly operated on stomach. One, it can cause just irritation of the tissues, as the internal tissues, as they're trying to heal. So we don't want the gastric irritants of like alcohol and caffeine in those early healing stages. The carbonation, sometimes the bubbles in that small stomach can cause gas pain, bloating, and feel very uncomfortable. And also, we don't want any reflux issues as well. So bubbly liquid can kind of push acids up. And so we ask people to avoid those things. And so this middle session conversation is important because people might be drinking these things and not know that afterwards we don't recommend drinking. Yeah. There's one other thing that I like to talk about, and this one, I like to use a demonstration because I think it makes the point so much better than just saying. So we encourage people actually not to drink much juice. And I know some people are like, well, why? Juice is healthy. Well, yes, juice has nutrients in it, has lots of good vitamins and minerals in it. But let me show you, let's do this experiment together. All right, so I have my 8-ounce glass of fake milk. We're going to pretend it's 8 ounces of fake orange juice. Okay. So Kemal, if I was going to be fancy and instead of pouring this orange juice out of a carton, I was going to fresh squeeze it and have it for a meal. How many oranges do you think it would take to get about that much juice?
So I'm just going to guess, right?
Yeah,
5.
yes. Okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of what my guess is, about 4 to 5. My patients usually say somewhere around there or more. So the reason I don't encourage a lot of juice drinking, especially after surgery, is because if I drink this, I'm getting the sugar from about 5 oranges, and I'm also not getting hardly any of the fiber in that orange. So I would much rather a patient that has bariatric surgery eat a serving of fruit every day if they want, maybe just one serving so they don't get too much sugar in, but a serving of fruit is very healthy because one, let's say I ate a half of an orange. If you're a bariatric surgery patient, you might not even get through a whole half. Maybe you get through a quarter of it, but that's going to go in that small stomach and it's going to fill you up. Whereas if I drank the juice, that's not going to fill me up. So it can be beneficial that way. Plus, when the person eats that orange, they get all that dietary fiber, the cell walls that keep in the juice in the orange. And that is a nutrient that Americans don't get enough of, is healthy dietary fiber. So when you eat your fruit, you're getting in less sugar, you're getting in the beneficial fiber, and you're going to fill up more. So that's the reason why we kind of discourage a lot of juice drinking after surgery. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good. The last, well, there's 2 other topics that I talk about in this middle session, and you introduced the topic beautifully earlier when you were sharing with us your tracking app that you have created. Now, I have my patients download an already established tracking app that works well for patients that have bariatric surgery. And in the first session, I usually ask them to download it and to watch some of the tutorials online after we meet the first time. So they're kind of familiar with it, but they probably haven't started using it yet. So in this middle session, that's when I talk a little bit more about using the tracking app. Sometimes, depending on the individual, I might, in fact, earlier, the patient I had right before this session, I literally held my phone up and I opened up my app version of the app and I touched buttons and I showed them how they could do a few things. So, so I do also spend a little bit of time talking about why we really encourage people to use an app, because honestly, they're a pain to use. They take time, they take effort. And so it's easier not to do it, right? It's easier to not put your stuff in your spreadsheet. But we do know that when people do take that time and make the effort, they become much more aware of how things add up over the course of a day. And sometimes we just have no idea. For example, even though I'm a dietitian and my expertise is in this arena, I don't know how many calories I ate yesterday. I don't know how many grams protein I had because I didn't track.
Sure.
Now, of course, try to eat fairly similarly. And in the past, when I've tracked, I'm aware of my intake. So doing this, putting everything you eat and drink into an app, at least on somewhat of a regular basis. Sometimes I have patients start with 2 or 3 or 4 days a week, maybe not 7 days a week. And I usually have them get at least one weekend day in, because sometimes our eating habits are very different on a weekend day than they are on a weekday. And so we talk through doing that. And then once you get some really good data in there, once you've gotten full days of what you eat and drink, you can start to look at it, and then that helps inform you where you need to make efforts. So, because sometimes we assume, hey, I want to lose weight, so I got to cut calories. Well, if you've used the app, maybe you're not eating way too many calories. Maybe you're just eating a lot of a particular nutrient that you need to cut down on. So for example, when I track, I usually notice that my fat intake is a bit high. So now I know, because I have data specifically, I can go, okay, instead of just cutting calories or cutting carbs, which I don't overeat, I'll work on looking at what are the things that I eat that are high in fat. Maybe I'll eat one less a day and see if I can get that number down. So it just helps be much more strategic, and feel like you're a little bit maybe more in control of trying different mechanisms. And so it's a
just going to reshare that people like they have the good understanding of it. So this is just a summary of what I wanted to see. But when we open this,
okay,
let's
yeah,
when I open one of the records, then I'm able to actually record. Like, I'm not recording all of those because I designed this earlier, maybe a couple of years ago. But this actually is giving me like the breakfast options, coffee, lunch, late lunch, dinner, beverages. So then I used to actually record all of those. And it was a little bit too much. So then I actually see what's more important. That's
made some
why
adjustments.
the intermittent diet actually was simpler because then I don't have to keep track of a lot of different things.
Right.
It's like the main thing is that can I actually keep myself clear from like any kind of unnecessary calories, and that's what I was able to why I actually introduced another field here. So then, but it does help when you see it all together, and if you're able once is whether or not you're able to do it. So like whether or not you're capable of doing something, some commitment that you have, so then you are able to follow through that. But then you're also looking at, okay, so if as you keep doing it, you have to make those adjustments as you were. And and I always go back and see if there are any other things that I can do, I can cut off, or I can actually combine with something else, so that I don't have to keep track of all those different things. So one thing that I also want to tell you, and maybe you are going to mention this, but I used to have a home gym, like pretty much all the weight.
That was my next topic, was exercise. Yes. Thank you.
Like I try to get all of my exercise from my daily walk, and then I have tennis twice a week, Wednesday nights and then Saturday mornings. So, but one thing that I was not doing a lot is I like this gym was kind of not being utilized. So then it's on the second level of the garage. So last 2 months, I brought the ones that I'm going to use, I brought them down to the garage level. So now, actually, because they're right there, so now I'm using them. So, and I think that also kind of, I remember how much actually I enjoy doing it, number one. Number two, you feel certain muscles stretching, or like, because you mentioned something about the protein intake, and when we don't have enough protein, when we don't take enough protein, how we lose muscle, right? So because the body is using the muscle mass. So that also kind of, I believe that also helped me during my journey.
And exercise for many of us, it's so much of the difficulty is in the getting started. Once most of us start into it, then our bodies start to release chemicals like serotonin and adrenaline. And those tend to make us happier or at least engage us and make us more energetic. So sometimes, so yes, this exercise was the last topic that I definitely take time to talk about in a middle session usually, because patients come in with various levels of activity before they get bariatric surgery. Like you're kind of in the middle portion where you realize you needed to expand how frequently you're doing your exercise and what kind of exercise you're doing. Some people come into my sessions doing really no regular exercise. Most people are kind of intermittent. They do it for a while and then they stop, and then they do something else and they stop, which I can't say that I don't do in my life. Sometimes I get off track and I always have to restart doing it. And that's okay. As long as I keep restarting, I'm in a better place. So I typically work with people to set some realistic goals on how to start that going on. And I often encourage patients to figure out how to do a combination of aerobic exercise, and that can be anything from just going on walks like you do, to more vigorous sports like tennis if they want to, or maybe swimming or aqua therapy, especially if they have mobility issues or a lot of body pain. Doing exercises that are non-impact, like the stationary bike. I introduce things like chair workouts. And then I also encourage some additional strength training, things that literally are using weights to build more muscle as well. So some aerobic and some strength. And then I will walk them through what their options are for strength training, because sometimes that's a little overwhelming. If I've got somebody, especially that has never been in a gym before, I let them know, you don't have to actually go to a gym if you don't want to. You can get some light weights at home. You can use YouTube, and I tell them how to find helpful videos that are based on their level. Like I always tell them, start with a beginner video or something like that, so you're not doing something that could hurt you. So yes, thank you for bringing that exercise up, because that's something important.
Let's actually, I'm going to share this with you. And sometimes we go through this in our bariatric sessions, Bariatric Friday sessions as well. Like the exercise itself, like when we label it as something that we have to do, maybe that's kind of overwhelming for some of us. But really what we are looking for is the activity.
Movement. Yes.
Right. So like this morning, we had meetings back to back, but then they are normally 1 hour meetings, and then one of them was done in 45 minutes. That 15 minutes, I had to just start walking in the backyard. And then I did it twice today, like one in the morning, one in the mid-morning. So that gives me like easily 3,100 steps before I get to the office, which is maybe like half or maybe 3/7 of what I need for the entire day. If I didn't take that action, and if I just sit and then start doing more emails between those two meetings, then I wasn't going to be able to put another like 1,200 steps. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to a gym and then just be on a treadmill for 60 minutes.
Exercise can be broken up, to more achievable chunks that will add up to a good amount of steps like you experience. Absolutely.
So,
like right now in our session, I'm at a standing desk. I sit at my desk a good portion of the day, but I just, I've learned that I need to make myself get up out of that chair and do a session here or there just standing. And then at the lunch break, yes, there's always a zillion things I could be doing, but I usually try to at least carve out 10 to 15 minutes where I go out into the big parking lot we have, and I walk around. It's funny, all of us dietitians do that, by the way. We go walk around for 15 minutes. And is 15 minutes of walking enough for me during the day? No, but it does exactly what you said. Is I'm looking at my regular life, all the busyness that I have, and I'm trying to fit in a little bit here and a little bit there. And then, yes, trying to actually fit in some purposeful exercise too is important, but my purposeful exercise is usually now only a half an hour on the exercise bike because I've already done 20 minutes or more with my activity. So you are exactly on the point there. It doesn't have to be so overwhelming. We just have to get creative.
Yeah, and it's also just planning your day, like knowing how much time you are going to be in the office or sitting. And if you have something going on at night, you know that you're not going to be able to walk. So then you have to put more effort during the day to see if you can actually move more. So there are a lot of good ways, but I think, again, just taking it seriously and then knowing that you are going to see the result. It won't
Immediately,
happen
right.
in the 3-4 weeks, but it will definitely happen in 2 to 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely what I'm seeing. And I do want to share more stuff with you from now to the next time we have this session. As I do different things, and just because I was going to really repeat this nutrition visit too, I was making a little bit more effort to see if I can share more stuff with you. And
Okay.
as a result, I saw probably 10 to 14 pounds weight loss. Thank you. But why this is important for our
That was you.
why it's important for our patients who are going through the bariatric surgery process is because there are two. We want them to actually learn how to live with the conditions that they are going to be having. So we are preparing them for that. And the other thing is that we want them to lose weight prior to surgery so then their liver can actually shrink. And that can create some complications if you don't do those, which part of the robot diet that we have.
Right, helps to shrink the liver so they can get to the stomach really easily.
Absolutely. So, but while you're doing that, you can actually have multiple benefits because you then pick up new habits, and then guess what happens? Like once you have those new habits, and then that's healthier and it's giving you results, you probably don't have to change a lot of things after the
Right,
surgery.
because the goal is we don't want I don't want my patients going through surgery and then feeling like they have to change everything after surgery. It's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So that's exactly why we have these sessions, is to ease them into things over a period of a couple months so that after surgery, they have been practicing these things. You're right, they don't have to be perfect, but they need to kind of be more purposeful and mindful. I mean, there's a recurring theme between what you and I've been talking about today, and it's just think ahead a little bit. We have to do that in so many areas of our life. We have to do that with our finances, right? If we don't save a little money, we could be in trouble, So there's a lot of things that whether we like it or not, we need to. And that's part of this process. I always tell my patients, I am not your nanny. I'm not the food nanny going, but what I am here to say is, hey, if you don't think about these things, you could be in a position afterwards where you're not as happy with your results. So I always say, I'm here to talk straight with you about things. And I'm just going to do it hopefully in a little bit of a playful way, so it's not terribly painful.
Well, no, that's all good stuff. So hopefully our patients understand the value of what we are trying to do for them prior to the surgery. And also, you guys are available post-surgery as well. So if there's, for whatever reason, they need more support, more time, we are available.
And they have access to us through the IQ Health portal. So if they have questions, we always encourage our patients to reach out with a question, and we can always type them back. Something that doesn't necessarily, if they don't want a whole session, they can ask us questions that way. I did want to mention one of the things, how most of us tend to sum up the second session or the middle sessions is we then go over what are the goals that we set with that patient today. So just to remind them and refresh them, like for you, it might be, okay, you said your goal, Kemal, was to add in, we didn't talk specifically how many days, but how many days of using that equipment that you brought down to the first level of your garage. We would write that down as one of your goals, and we would put down, whatever realistic goal of how many times a week you want to use that, and we'd write that down. So I'd have people probably set a meal planning goal. Maybe they don't plan breakfast, lunch, and dinner by tomorrow, but maybe they start to work on, okay, this next week, I'm going to think about what are healthy snacks I can start to have. And then maybe after they have gotten good at that, then they take on something else. So we stair step this to make it more achievable. And then I'll have them set some exercise goals. I'll have them maybe start to experiment with separating eating and drinking, because that can be a hard one. Some people are used to always having their bottle or a glass when they're eating. So maybe I'll have them start to drink in between their meals and not have a glass at the table when they eat their meal. So I'll have them write that down as a goal.
Okay.
So yes, so that's how we would sum things up in that middle session.
All right. So then I will make some more adjustments and I will share those with you in our next session.
Okay.
So
that sounds good.
This was very, very beneficial. I do enjoy doing these. And also it makes it even more fun when you guys are participating and sharing what you do. And we're hoping that for those patients who may need more support, they can also watch these videos after the live events. And because you can just do it on your own time and you can take your time, you can fast forward, just slow it down, whatever you want to do, it's at your disposal. So we'll make sure that there are more resources available for our patients. Beth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, totally my pleasure. Thanks. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.